Inauguration. Okay. Inauguration, not on the improvement.
Jai Shri Gurudev. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Mahatma Gandhi. Good morning, one and all. Myself, Dr. Vinay Kumar K, Professor in the Department of Panchakarma, feel very privileged to welcome you all for Sneha varidhi and Madhu manthana, a series of national level webinars exclusively for PhD scholars conducted by our institution, Sri Kala Bhairaveshwara Swami Ayurvedic Medical College, Hospital and Research Center, Bangalore, in association with Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bangalore, as a mark of our Silver Jubilee celebration. We are glad to have you all here in this online platform, and on behalf of the institution, I wholeheartedly welcome you all to this special morning of splendor. It is our custom and tradition to start any auspicious event by invoking the Almighty, the creator of whole universe. So now I would like to invite Ms. Manasvi Egde to start this event by offering prayers.
भूतगणादिसेवितं कपित्तजम्बो फलसारभक्षितम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजं नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजं चतुर्भुजं पीतवस्त्रं सर्वालङ्कारशोभितं ध्यायेत् धन्वन्तरिं देवं सुरासुरनमस्कृतं ध्यायेत् धन्वन्तरिं देवं सुरासुरनमस्कृतं सुरासुरनमस्कृतं सुरासुरनमस्कृतम्.
Thank you, Ms. Manasvi Egde, for your enlightening prayers. Now, I would like to invite our Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. Kiran M. Gaur, for the welcome speech.
Jai Shri Gurudev. I offer my salutations to His Holiness Padma Bhushana Parma Pujya Jagadguru Sri 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 Dr. Balagangadharanatha Mahaswamiji. I offer my humble pranams to His Holiness Parma Pujya Jagadguru Sri 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 Dr. Nirmalanandanatha Mahaswamiji. And I offer my sincere pranams to His Holiness Pujya Sri Sri Sominath Swamiji. Our institution, Sri Kala Bhairaveshwara Swami Ayurvedic Medical College, Hospital and Research Center, Bangalore, functioning under Sri Adi Chinchinagiri Shikshana Trust, was established in the year 1996-97 by His Holiness Padma Bhushana Parma Pujya Jagadguru Sri 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 Dr. Balagangadharanatha Mahaswami. It is a matter of pride and honor to say to you all that our institution has successfully completed 25 years of its service in spreading the knowledge of Ayurveda to undergraduates, postgraduates, and PhD scholars. In this regard, we are celebrating Silver Jubilee by conducting series of national levels webinars, Sneha, varidhi, and Madhu, manthana exclusively for PhD scholars. Meanwhile, we are preparing PhD research database consisting of a list of all PhD theses done across the nation. I now seek the blessings of Parama Pujya Jagadguru Sri 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 Dr. Nirmalanandanatha Mahaswamiji, President, Sri Adi Chinchinagiri Shikshana Trust, Chancellor, Adi Chinchinagiri University. Pujya Mahaswamiji has obtained his Masters in Structural Engineering from IIT Chennai, and Sri Adi Chinchinagiri Shikshana Trust has more than 500 institutions across India. I also seek the blessings of Pujya Sri Sri Sominath Swamiji. Now, I wholeheartedly welcome Vice Chancellor and all the faculties of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bangalore, for associating with us in organizing the event as a part of Silver Jubilee celebrations. I wholeheartedly welcome Dr. N. Anjaney Murthy, former Joint Director, Department of Ayush, Government of Karnataka. I also wholeheartedly welcome Dr. Ram Manohar, Research Director, Amrita School of Ayurveda, Kerala, who readily accepted our invitation to deliver his lecture today for the benefit of all the PhD scholars across India. I wholeheartedly welcome all the eminent guest speakers of Sneha Varidhi and Madhu manthana, who are very popular across the nation for their knowledge and service to Ayurveda. I also wholeheartedly welcome all the directors, principals, and deans of PhD institutions who have extended their support by sharing with us the details of PhD scholars and researchers conducted in their institutions. It is not possible to conduct this event without the participation of PhD guides and PhD scholars. I wholeheartedly welcome all PhD guides across the nation, and I welcome all the PhD scholars participating in this webinar. I hope that this online platform will be a guiding tool for further correspondence with you in the process of improvising the Ayurveda understanding. I wholeheartedly welcome all faculty members, PhD scholars, PG scholars, and undergraduates of SKAMC Bangalore, the support of whom is very essential for conducting the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the welcome speech. When Guru is there with you, there is no need to fear, even if the whole world turns against you. When Guru is there with you, there is no need to fear, even if the whole world turns against you. When Guru is not there with you, there is no meaning to all worldly pressure, even if the whole world is with you. May I request Puja Swamiji to inaugurate the function by lighting the lamps. I request.
Proceed with the next program.
Now, I request His Holiness, Parama Pujya, Jagat Guru, Shri Dr. Nirmalanandanath Mahaswamiji, to bless the gathering with his divine words.
Harihi Om Tat Sat. Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrusham Tattvamasya Laksham Yekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Sri Vidyam Jagatam Dhatrim Sargasthiti Layeshwarim Namami Lalitam Nitya Maha Tripura Sundari. My humble pranams to the lotus feet of His Holiness Jagat Guru Padma Bhushan Dr. Sri Balgangadhanath Mahaswamiji, being 71st Jagat Guru of Sri Adi Chunchin Mahasansthan Math, which has the history of 1800 years. He has established more than 500 education institutions, under which now about 1.5 lakh students are quenching the thirst of knowledge. So today we have been organizing National Webinar Series for PhD scholars. When there is a global pandemic, when there is no possibility for offline programs, during one such occasion, we have been celebrating this program. My remembrance to all the divine dignitaries and the great speakers who are here to speak on 2-3 topics, which is going to be really useful for our students. So at this point of time, it is a great moment. More than 200 participants have participated in this webinar program. Today we have been experiencing the devastating COVID corona virus effects. At this point of time, knowing the limitation of not joining together, this webinar is conducted. Though I could be a speaker or during the offline program, this being the online program, I don't think I can do so. Albert Einstein, quite long ago, about 100 years ago, he had told regarding our science and technology and its limitations and its devastating effects. I quote Albert Einstein, I can't imagine the day when all our scientific innovations and technological applications would take away all our human interactions. That was quite true till this global pandemic set on. But today, can we imagine the life in the society, in the world, in the absence of the innovations of the science and applications of the technology? This webinar, which we have been conducting, is the resultant effect and the fruit of science and the technology. Having said that, not that we have to glorify our science and technology. It has its own limitation too. Same scientist has mentioned, man has succeeded in splitting an atom before acquiring the wisdom of uniting human hearts. Having seen that now, though science and technology has bestowed so many things upon mankind, underneath somewhere else, we are being disintegrated. So today, Sneha, Varidhi and Madhu, manthana, these are the two topics on which subject experts are going to throw a light, are going to be useful really. Though there is a kind of unity in the external world, in the physical world, in metaphysical world, at the individual level, inside the human being, beyond the body and senses, there is a disintegrity. Honeycombing is formed. This is the time for us to get connected well within each inside. As we all know, there is a definition for the health and disease. When there is the right connection between the individual consciousness and the universal consciousness, there is no such possibility for disease. Always health is going to be prevailed by default. If there is a disrupt, if there is a disconnectivity, if there is no right understanding between the universal consciousness and the individual consciousness, all kinds of disease at the physical level, mental level, at the intellectual level will come to beings. So this is the time for us to integrate and synthesize all levels of personalities. So yoga is nothing but the knowledge of the life and the life science. It is a life science. So yoga unites at body level, mental level, and the spirit level. Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Indriyani paranyahuhu indriyabhyaha paramanaha manasastu parabuddhihe yo buddhehe parasastu sa. As we know, everybody, there are so many entities in the external world and internal world. Sense objects are there in the external world. Senses are there to pursue, and mind is there to understand. And again, that mind is connected with the intellect. And for all these connectivity, if there is no right light, right direction, right consciousness, obviously, even in the presence of these many, which are inert rather, are not going to act positively and properly. So there should be a right connectivity between body, mind, and spirit. If we achieve that, person is going to become wholesome and is going to become mindful. Such personality is going to be useful to the society. So today we have been conducting this national webinar for PhD scholars, that too in the light of deadly virus corona disease, global pandemic. Global pandemic, this for last 18 months has taken away all our human interactions, all our normal and natural life. It has taught us great lessons also. We people were thinking that a human being is the fruit of evolution and he can do anything. But after Corona has come into existence, we have been trying to understand our own limitation, the limitation of our knowledge. Though it has created the devastating effects, infecting millions and millions and taking away lives of so many millions, it has taught us so much. When man is going to set his life in line with the nature, when man is going to live in line with the nature, when man is going to synthesize body, mind, and the spirit, for one such, no such disease certainly is not going to affect. For instance, in the light of Corona, if you think, our neighboring state, Kerala, though people are infected, when it comes to fatality rate, mortality rate, far, far lesser than other states. The reason being, they have been practicing our ancient system of medicine, Ayurveda. So this is the one quintessence for all our research scholars to take for further studies. Ayurveda is a time-tested medical system. So if we can able to do more and more research in the field of Ayurveda, certainly it is going to rule the world once again. For each and everything, we have been depending upon the allopathy. Why? For the instant reaction, instant action. Forgetting about the long-term reaction, we have been using it. Not that we should not encourage, we should not accept allopathy. For when actually our life is going to, when our life health condition is going to be derailed during that time, accepting that allopathy is okay. But for each and everything, minding not its long-term ill effects, if we start accepting that, our life is going to be ruined like anything. So, having seen the neighboring states and certain other states of our country accepted Ayurveda treatment even for the corona, more and more research should happen. Today, as I have heard, about 56 colleges across the country have been promoting research and PhD programs. So many institutions are there. Only 56 colleges have been promoting mainly these research activities. Also, I heard of these many institutions across the country, only 200 guides are available. Hardly 710 or 700 plus students have been pursuing PhDs. Why? If at all, if any institution to be popularized, if you would like to tell this institution is quite great and has been doing really useful service to the society and the country in the field of the Ayurveda, we have to encourage research more and more. Because if research is done in that institution, application of that is going to be useful. Again, of these many 700, if they come out of the institutions with a PhD degree, we doubt how many such PhD theses and essence in the content is going to be really useful to alleviate the problems of the people. Any PhD should turn out to be useful application for treating the patients. Unfortunately, these days PhDs have been becoming to improvise to increase their status, their academic status, and their positions in the academic institutions. Apart from that, if these PhDs are going to be transformed in application form, if they are going to be useful in treating the patients, if their PhD essence and the result is going to be really useful, then we can go parallel to the allopathy. Though there are so many good things in the allopathy, our Indian system of medicine, Ayurveda, is the mother of so many other system of healthcare. Keeping that in mind, if we encourage, if all the colleges would encourage the research domain, institution is going to have one good name, and students, those who are going to come out of such institution, are going to become sublime and they are going to be useful to the society. So today's webinar, national webinar on these two topics. Great speakers are there. Certainly they are going to reflect upon this. And we have been making an effort with the help of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science of Karnataka, that we are trying to bring all the PhD holders and those we have been pursuing these PhDs on single platform. This much we have been doing. And to create a database. So far, so many PhDs have happened, the content, the topic, and the theme upon which all PhDs were done. If you are going to create the database, it is going to be useful to remaining of fraternity also. So keeping that in mind, our college should work on that. And the participants, those who have joined till the end of this program, I ask them to listen quite keenly the great and experienced and illustrious speakers, those who are going to speak on these two topics. And as I have to be till the end, of course, I am also going to listen to the words of these great speakers. But in the very beginning itself, I have spoken, making the way for them. Jai Shri Guru.
Ghee melts away and disappears when placed near fire. Just as a pot of ghee melts away and disappears when placed near fear, similarly to the sins slowly melts away and disappears in the vicinity of Guru. Similarly to the sins slowly melts away and disappears in the vicinity of Guru. I wholeheartedly thank Parama Pujya Jagat Guru Sri Dr. Nirmalanandanath Mahaswamiji for the nectar of blessings and evoking in us the significance of metaphysical dimension rather than being swayed away in the materialistic world. Thank you, Swamiji. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Priyanka Madam to introduce Dr. N. Anjanaya Murthy sir, former Joint Director of Ayush, Karnataka.
Jai Shri Gurudev. Namaste to all. It's my privilege to introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. N. Anjanaya Murthy, former Joint Director, Department of Ayush, Government of Karnataka, for this webinar. An individual who has affected in uplifting the science Ayurveda during last 4 decades. Sir is a man of virtue and simplicity and inspiration to all the scholars of Ayurveda. Sir has guided more than 100 research scholars from various fields like Ayurveda, Yoga, Food and Nutrition in India as well as foreign universities. Sir is pioneer in facilitating research activity in interdisciplinary approaches between Ayurvedic College and microbiology, pharmacology, grain science technology, oil and fat division, applied botany department. Sir has published many books and articles in various national and international journals. Sir was a member of various organizations, boards and commissions, namely Syllabus Framing Committee in CCM, TKDL for recording Ayurvedic knowledge in international patent offices, etc. Sir was chairman and member in BOS, BOE, BOAE Academic Council of many universities, including RTHS. Sir is known for treating more than thousands of patients across the India. Considering the contributions to the science, Sir honored with many awards, namely Abhinava Dhanvantari, Bishak Shri, etc. With pleasure, myself, Dr. Priyanka B. Thank you, one and all.
Priyanka Madam. Now I request Dr. N. Anjanaya Murthy sir for the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Namami Dhanvantarim Adidevam Surasurair Vandita Padapadmam Loke Jararubhaya Murtunashanam Data Ramesham Vidaushadinam. I offer my prayers at the lotus feet of Sri Nirmalana Swamiji and Sri Somanath Swamiji, and I feel that this is the golden day in the history of Ayurveda, where many PhD scholars and many teachers, many guides are coming under one platform, and this is the first time that so many people are joining together and exchanging these viewpoints. In Charaka, he's mentioning that Vidya Sambhasha Buddhi Medha Vardhananam. Such being the case, at the end of this total webinar, all the people will get enhanced and enriched knowledge. I have been given 10 minutes from the organizers. I'll try to complete my talk within that time. And I request the people, especially PhD scholars, to take one paper and pen, because what I'm trying to tell, I'm telling some materials which are not directly found in any textbook, which are coming from my practical experience. So what we call is out of box thinking and intensive classical study gives us a lot more to think about. And why I'm using this forum to think in this particular manners means the PhD people are very ripe, mature, and well disciplined people who know a lot of Ayurveda and the parallel sciences. And if I tell this type of matter to the Yogya audience, they'll be able to receive it, carry the information to the other particular people, and the golden age of Ayurveda is going to come back. So, in the diagnostic part of our diseases, we can definitely take our help of Ashtasthana, Prakriti Pariksha, and other things. But parallelly, some other materials are there which have been left from the regular practice, what is called as iridodiagnosis, pulse diagnostic methods developed from the Sony diagnostics of Japan, and Killian photography, which gives the prognostic and diagnostic values. So similarly, when we are talking of this Rasa Aushadhis, Namburi Hanumantarao has developed what is called as Namburi phased chromatography, which was actually financed by from the CCRAs, but now we have just kept it aside. We are not regularly using it. I think if it is fit, it can be used. Flame photometry and other type of investigations can be adopted. And when we are coming to this Prameha and Madhumeha as such, see, the whatever we are having this type of descriptions, I think if we want to understand the textbooks, Mahaduryacha Tanorata is mentioning. So every atom in the body is having Madhurata, and when it is having Madhurata, it will have a lot of complications also. Anything excess is going to harm the body. We'll come to this Prabhuta Avilata point. So Prabhutata we can easily understand. What should we understand by the meaning of Avilata? Clearly, many textbooks are mentioning Avilata as the turbidity. Okay. Now we have what is called as turbidometer in the physiology labs. Can we at least use turbidometer and tell urine has got so much of turbidity? Regularly, we are sitting in the OPD and write urine for albumin sugar microscopy. Okay, I have greatest respect for the science. Why should we not write Mutra Avilata Pariksha? Like this, if we do, our own students, ourselves will get more strength and more happiness. Okay, I'll come to a parallel thing. Mala Pariksha, we're telling Samani Rama, and we want the person to put this Mala in the Jala and see whether it is going to float or sink. Ultimately, what is happening is the specific gravity of the Mala. If it is more than 1, it's going to sink. I don't want to go into the much details because I just want to be as fast as possible. Now, in the treatment paraphernalia, we have Daivyopashraya, Yuktiyopashraya, Sattvaojaya. Let us do some introspection. How much of Daivyopashraya and Yuktiyopashraya are we using in our day-to-day practice? So if we give 33.33% to Daivyopashraya, 33.33% to Yuktiyopashraya, we are not using it. We're using only like what you call we're using Daivyopashraya, Yuktiyopashraya, and Sattvaojaya. Yuktiyopashraya we're regularly using by Aushadhas and other things, but Daivyopashraya, Sattvaojaya we're not using. And I request the people who are present to start using this Daivyopashraya and Sattvaojaya also in a particular manner. In this Sattvaojaya, we have this what is called as Dhyana. A lot of researches have been done on transcendental meditation, wherein the stress levels are going to come down, and we're going to get very good results. And good researches have been done on yogasanas also. And this particular yogasanas, dhyana, and vyayama, ahara, different aspects can be used for the preventive and curative aspects also. When we're talking about Rasa Aushadhis, the allopathic people tell that these are having some toxic effects. So now my point is, can we now do extensive studies on the toxicity studies and then prove to the all people that our drugs are safe? Many scattered researches have taken place at different centers, at this forum, all the people have joined together. I want to tell one matter here. Dr. Jailan Shastri of NMPB, he is collecting the toxicity studies from all the centers. I request the people who are present to send the toxicity studies that have been done in their institutions to him, so that from the government of India, it can be published and people will start accepting. And we tell that our basmas have got nanoparticles and other particular things. Okay, I accept it. Now, a company which has opened just 1 year back tells that I have manufactured Abraka Basma Sahasraputi. Is it possible to have this Sahasraputi of a 3 months old company or 6 months old company? We have to question. So in Jamnagar, they have done this study of Abraka Basma. When it is given 500 putas, colloidal natures is there. So like this, some spurious companies are spoiling the name of Ayurveda, and we should safeguard ourselves at this particular juncture. When the whole universe is looking at Ayurveda, we should standardize our medicines, and only standard medicine should be brought into practice. Regarding to the treatment aspects, my student, Dr. B. Guru Basaraj, who is the senior professor in JSS Ayurvedic Medical College, has done Takardhara on diabetic neuropathy, wherein Pada Daha, Pada Swapa come down. And one question is going to arise here. I think the speakers of the next days will be clarifying it. This Karapada Daha Swapa have been mentioned as Purva Lakshanas, but now we find this as the diabetic neuropathy after diabetes is happening. Lot of theoretical discussions are possible. I'm also able to do it, but I don't want to delve into that particular aspects. But the speakers who are here, the audience who are here, are to seriously think about this Takradara business. When such an extensive study of 5,000 people is there, why not we take up multi-central trials of Takradara at the different centers and do this study and publish it in peer-reviewed journals like BMJ, Lancet, and other things. Nowadays, a statement is like publish or perish. So if you publish and convert this data into the acceptable form, maybe this particular Takradara chapter can be added as a chapter in the allopathic textbooks. Just by adding that into the allopathic textbooks, that is not the aim, but the people who are suffering from this diabetic neuropathy, who have no means of getting all right, can become all right by our procedures. Okay, now PhD scholars are there. I am telling that these people are the cream of the society. I respect them. I greatly admire those particular people. I want to share my experiences regarding Basti. See, I have been practicing Basti since about 50 years now. And when we were using this Basti, this is what I have found in my practice. Basti Balavardaka. Okay. Basti is doing improvement of Bala in hands and legs. When we compare the Bala improvement in the hands and legs, Basti improves Bala of the legs to a greater extent. This is my finding. So you please do your research and find out. Okay, among the two legs, right leg and left leg, Basti is going to improve the Bala to the left leg. Then we ask, sir, no textbook, no commentator has mentioned these particular things. Therein, my request to the PhD scholars is, we should be ever observant. Our sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of hearing should be perfect, should be sharp. Then we'll be able to observe various things. That is how Alexander Fleming and other particular people could do a lot of good things. My sincere request is, do sincere studies, concentrated studies. Now we are telling Google is so good, Google is so good. Now in Jamnagar, one lorry load of Google was brought, but it is not Google at all. It was some other gum oleoresin. Now see, Comifera Mukul, original material, if it is used, it is good. Okay. And now we're talking of Yava. See, Yava in North India, they're taking barley. In Karnataka, some people are taking it as one variety of wheat, which is grown in Gulbarga, which has got low glycemic index and more fiber. So now, once for all, clear the controversy. Majority, 90% of people are taking barley. Only 10% of people are taking this type of wheat. Okay, as per Ayurveda, Yava means only this, nothing else. So if we give this type of conclusions, the undergraduate students will not fall into confusion. Okay, we understand what is Yava. We'll take it as barley. And he is telling Yava Saktu has to be taken. How Yava Saktu has to be taken? My teacher, Pandit Hardar Shastri, a very great exponent of Ayurveda, he is telling Saktu is to be taken in a particular manner. Just by telling Saktu, it is not going to give good results. We should not buy it with teeth. We should not drink it. and we should, when you are taking it, we should have a sense of happiness at the chest, at the level of esophagus. So now, a particular method of taking Sattu is there, and only if it is taken in a particular form, it is going to give results. You tell Chanaprash and Chanaprash is not there, potatoes are there instead of Amalki, then it is not going to give good results. Similarly, on Yavasaktu, lot of researches have been done. Trifala Bhavita Yavasaktu and Yavasaktu, they got good results. Okay. Again, in Charaka Sutrasthana 25th chapter 40 shlok, he mentioned Yavaka among the Ahitatama dravyas of Shukadanya. So now at one place he's mentioning Ahitatama, and at other place we're getting good results. How are we to understand this? At the first year level, we teach just take water before food, and if you take water before food, the person's weight is going to come down. Okay, very simple thing. On BMS students itself, at the UG level, who is having obesity, give this thing, water before food, and see this is going to come or not. And if we try to inculcate this type of habit from the undergraduate level, it doesn't require much energy for doing this experiment. Okay, we want the person to walk. Walking is good exercise. We have what is called as tremor plate. So in this tremor plate, if we walk on the tremor plate, a particular structural changes are there in the tremor plate, and it gives extraordinary results. So this tremor plate is available in the market, you use it. Okay, now he is telling Rasak Nanat Anyatra. Rasa should not be examined by the tongue. CF people in Mysore have developed electronic tongue, electronic nose. So why should we not use this? Why every college should not have this electronic nose and electronic tongue? And by using these things, we are able to understand our own science better. We tell Vishrata, Dravata, Raga, Spandanam, Laguta, Tata. I have developed parameters for measuring Vishrata, Dravata, Raga, Spandanam, Laguta, Tata. So if we are able to measure this particular gunas, Panchamahabhutas in the Rakta, I think that is ultimate. When the person is coming to the OPD, you send the lab to laboratory. You tell this is the Dravata index before treatment. After treatment, your Dravata index. Sir, you are telling so much. Why it is necessary? I have got lot of handicaps also. When I am giving Snehapana in conditions of Madhumeha, suddenly patient goes into the ketoacidosis. And now the name of Ayurveda is going to get spoiled. How we should manage ketoacidosis? It is a very serious burning problem. So we should be very careful. Upayam chintayan pragnaha, apayam api chintayan. We are not supposed to do some particular things. What type of Sneha should be used? What type of material should be used? How much Sneha should be used? In the modern, in the parallel science, they have got what is called as intermittent fasting. So now take this whole thing and do a summary good material to the person, then good results are going to take place. Now we're talking of Swara Pariksha. In speech engineering center, developed advanced parameters for speech analysis. So use this advanced parameters. Scientific instruments are not the monopoly of any particular individuals. Regarding Chaya Vignana, in Bangalore, there is one Sri Rama Vaidishala. It was actually a college 100 years back. They have published one book which is called as Chaya Vignana. Regarding Arishta, he is mentioning how should we understand Arishta. Read this Chaya Vignana and you will get good results. And we are using Basti. So when you are using Basti, Charaka himself is mentioning Ikshvaku is the best drug. And why should you not use Ikshvaku and get good results? When he is telling best, so let us go for this best thing. Okay, we are talking of Dhatri Nisha. Generally Nisha. But Dr. C.S. Somyaji, a research officer in Bangalore, he has studied Curcuma longa and Curcuma aromatica. He is studying Curcuma aromatica is better than Curcuma longa. Okay, C.S. Somyaji is there in Bangalore. He has done research on Hello, Haviprashat Meha Kushtayoho. Are you able to listen to me? Hello? Haviprashat Meha Kushtayoho.
Say, sir, we audible, sir.
Haviprashat Meha Kushtayoho. In Bangalore, a seminar was conducted on Madhumeha. What is the meaning of Havi? Havi literally it means only ghee. It is concluded that Havi means Samisha Ahar also. Then go for this. This thing should be avoided. Havi should be avoided. So like this, central government has done research on this Ayush 82. It is being marketed by different names. I don't want to tell the brand names, but use the things and get good results. Mamiji Ganvati, Trifala, Haridra, Manjishta are different particular aspects, and Sushita's guidelines regarding the Avasthan Sarchikisa of the Prameha is good. Last, I want to end the topic. Every minute we should drink Ayurveda, eat Ayurveda, dream of Ayurveda, think of Ayurveda, study Ayurveda, then only we'll get good results. I'll tell one small instance. My friend Ishwar Reddy, who was a senior professor in Mysore, he treated one insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus case. When Dr. Dodnaranappa was the consultant doctor for the IDM case since so many years, he used to give insulin to the patient. And now, after some years, he stopped going to Dodnaranappa. Then Dodnaranappa asked this patient, "How is it you're not coming to me?" "Sir, I have become all right by Ishwar Reddy." "No, I want to test you." "No, sir, I'm all right. Why you should come to you? Why you should get tested?" "So I will not charge anything. You please come to me." So he went to the Dodnaranappa. He's a senior diabetologist in Mysore. He got the test and everything is normal. He was wondering how this case is becoming all right. So he presented it to the IMA meeting. Okay, we're telling Urka and Upahana are linked with this Medo Shrutas. I took my first year PhD students to the Visionary Institute of Medical Science, Bellary, for this anatomy discussion. So they're also, they're telling Urka, Upahana are important. Truth is only one. It may be seen from different aspects. Ultimately, what is happening is we should think outside the box. Number one, we should do introspective, intensive classical study, and we should follow the procedures of Satatadhyayana, Vada, Tadvidya Acharya Sevacha. Then only we'll get the ultimate truth hidden in our textbook. And I thank the opportunity given by the authorities. And I think that my day is blessed that I'm able to share my knowledge of 50 plus years to all my younger brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Pratyaksham alpam, apratyksham analpam. Pratyaksham alpam, apratyksham analpam. It is indeed always a pleasure to listen to the uninterrupted flow of thoughts from Dr. N. Anjanaya Murthy sir. I wholeheartedly thank him for the keynote address and evoking in us to explore the apratyaksha side of the research aspects. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Priyanka Madam to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. P. Ram Manohar sir, Research Director, Amrita School of Ayurveda, Kerala.
Jai Shri Gurudev. It's my pleasure to introduce Vaidya P. Ram Manohar. Sir, presently serving as Research Director at Amrita Center for Advanced Research in Ayurveda, Achara, attached to Amrita Schools of Ayurveda, managed by Amrita University. Sir is known for his work in field of research in Ayurveda in India and around the globe since last 30 years. If one take the closer look at the eminent scholars in Ayurveda research, sir is an inspiration icon for young budding research scholars in India. Sir was a principal investigator on Indian side of National Institute of Health, USA sponsored research study to the scientifically evaluate efficacy of Ayurveda in rheumatoid arthritis, which was conducted in collaboration with University of Washington and AVP Coimbatore. The outcome of this study was published in Annals of Rheumatic Diseases and Journal of Clinical Rheumatology and won the prestigious Excellence in Integrative Medicine Research Award. Sir has a credit of more than 100 publications, including research paper he published in peer-reviewed indexed research journals. Under his editorialship, Ancient Science of Life became largest PubMed indexed research journal in field of Ayurveda. Sir is an editorial board of Indian Journal for History of Science, chief editor of Abhinava Dhanvantari. Sir is pioneer in facilitating globalizing the science Ayurveda by participating in more than 20 major international conferences. Sir is inculcating research thoughts in young researcher mind by delivering orations in over 100 national conferences in India. Sir was honored with many awards, namely Ayurveda Marga Pravartaka, Bharadwaja Puraskara, Dr. C. Dwarakanatha Memorial Award. Sir is research advisor for National Science Academy, Government of India, member of WHO expert group for developing international standard for terminology for Ayurveda, member of working group in Niti Ayoga for formulating educational policy in integrative medicine. Sir is a member of Ayush Interdisciplinary Task Force for COVID-19 of Ministry of Ayush Government of India as well as Kerala government. So with this, indeed, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Vaidyapi Ram Manohar, and I welcome you, sir.
Namaste. My most respectful pranams to Param Puja Jagadguru Sri 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 Dr. Nirmalanandanatha Mahaswamiji, the President of the Sri Adi Chunchanagiri Shikshana Trust, Dr. Kiran Gaud, Principal, Kalabhairaveshwara Swami, Ayurvedic Medical College, Professor Anjaneya Murthy, all the other dignitaries, faculties, and students. It's a great pleasure and honor to be present here. I'm thankful to the organizers for this invitation. And it is a great inspiration to listen to Professor Anjaneya Murthy sir. I've always been inspired by his works and also his incisive and very thought-provoking talks. So that has set the stage, and I hope I will be able to do justice and share some thoughts on how we can bring in research perspectives to make the application of Ayurvedic insights, concepts relevant for our times. Ayurveda is a healthcare system that has a remarkable continuity of thousands of years. And it is a unique structure of this knowledge system, which is very organized and structured, but at the same time flexible, that has made it possible for Ayurveda to survive for such a long period. Ayurvedic knowledge system is organized in the framework of Tattva, Shastra, and Vyavahara. So the Tattva are the foundational principles, where we come into contact with the laws of nature, the natural laws that, are even not fully comprehensible by the human mind, but which we keep attempting to understand and articulate in the form of Shastra or theory. So it's a very important part that in Ayurveda we distinguish between Tattva and Shastra. At the level of Tattva, Ayurveda is Shashwata. It is eternal. It is unchanging because the laws of nature, Bhava Swabhava Nityatvad, Swabhava Samsiddha Lakshanatvad. So at that level in nature, Ayurveda is eternal. But Anyatra Avabodhopadeshabhyam, it is not eternal in terms of our understanding. We can forget this knowledge, we can misunderstand it, but we try to articulate it in the form of Shastra. And based on our understanding of Shastra, we try to apply it in the form of Vyavahara. So Vyavahara is a practical application. And at this level, it is Desha Kala determined. I mean, the application of Ayurveda has to keep changing according to the Desha and Kala. The Shastra can also be, articulated in more powerful and effective ways from time to time. We can see the Shastra of Charaga and the Shastra of Sushruta. There are differences. Vagbada has his own way of presenting it. So at the level of Shastra, there is some flexibility. But at the level of Tattva, Ayurveda is unchanged. So this is a very beautiful framework. And when we are thinking of PG, PhD research, when we're thinking of creative applications in the field of Ayurveda, I think it is extremely important that we keep this feature of Ayurveda in mind. So this beautiful blend of very strong foundational principles and a lot of flexibility in application and innovation at the same time. If we don't revive this aspect of Ayurveda, I don't think we can really mainstream it globally as a healthcare system of the future. So the PhD scholars should become the drivers of this innovation, should become the source of new creativity in the field of Ayurveda. And as Anjaney Murthy sir was pointing out, this out-of-box thinking is very much within the scope of, the Ayurvedic framework of knowledge. So today we are going to discuss about the Medhovaha Srotas. Of course, I have been asked to talk about research perspectives related to the Medhovaha Srotas. So I'm not attempting to give a discourse about what is Medhovaha Srotas or its principles, but how we can bring a research perspective and how we can mainstream the knowledge of Ayurveda so that it can deal with unmet needs in current society that we can attribute to disorders of the Medhovaha Srotas, what kind of approaches we should take. So the structure of my talk is, organized in this way. First, we will talk about the challenges posed by Medho Roga in modern times. What are the gaps that we have today? What are the limitations of presently available treatment options? On the one hand, how this problem is becoming a pandemic, and what is the potential of Ayurveda in managing Medho Roga? But how can then we, through proper research, make sure that it benefits the people? How can we really, fill in the gaps that are left by the current healthcare system so that, the benefits actually reach the common man? So this is the framework that I'm talking about. But before we go into this topic, I thought some basic perspectives on research and Ayurveda would also be of interest, because I'm going to suggest research approaches that are more appropriate for Ayurveda. I mean, when we think about research, today the general feeling is that we just have to apply modern research methodologies to Ayurveda, like RCTs, animal studies, laboratory work. While all of these are very useful tools, I wouldn't say that we must even dismiss them. They are all great achievements of modern science, but they are tools. If we have to use it in an appropriate way for Ayurveda, I mean, if we blindly start following Western protocols, because modern medicine is based on a different approach, which is sometimes characterized as reductionistic fractionation approach, where the whole is broken into parts, and you try to understand disease at a biomolecular level of mechanism. Whereas in Ayurveda, we are trying to comprehend the whole and relationships. So we are looking at the same reality, but in another angle. So the methodologies have to be slightly different. And I think one of the major problems why for many diseases we are not able to mainstream Ayurveda, although individual successes are there, clinicians are successful, but at a public health level, at a global level, we are not able to position Ayurveda as a strong system, because practice and research are not, harmoniously synthesized. We practice in one way, the research done is in another way. When it comes to research, we are trying to mimic Western medicine. We want to find one drug which will be effective for a particular disease. We know in Ayurveda, it doesn't work that way. Even modern medicine is slowly coming towards a more personalized, complex molecular cocktail. These kind of concepts are emerging in modern medicine also. So it is high time. I always would like to recommend a methodology of research which is based on the classical Ayurvedic system of knowledge building, but which incorporates all the relevant modern technologies and methodologies that are available today. But it should be grounded on our epistemological approach, on the Ayurvedic system of knowledge building. So I want to spend a little time discussing about this, and what do we mean by engaging in the study of Ayurveda at the BAMS, MD, and PhD level. How can we position this to create a breed of Ayurveda physicians who can take this knowledge system forward? So this is a slide which I have been repeatedly showing in many of my talks to drive home the difference between the approach in modern medicine and Ayurveda. This is just an imagery. An Ayurveda, a modern doctor is like an archer who is having a target in front of him, which is very clear, stationary. And he takes aim and shoots and hits the bullseye. this approach of modern pharmacology has been called as a magic bullet approach, which is, there is no magic bullet. They are all already accepting it, because there is no drug can just find the magic bullet and not affect the rest of the body. That is the kind of philosophy on which modern pharmacology was built. Find that mechanism of a disease and take one single molecule which can attack it, and then solve the disease. This is a little utopian idea of pharmacology. In reality, what happens is the drug works in so many unwanted areas also, and that is why we have this whole epidemic of side effects and other problems. But this is the approach of modern medicine. So a modern doctor, how he looks at treatment, how treatment protocols are devised, are all based on this approach of identifying the molecular target and choosing the medicine, and then just aiming and shooting. But if we try to force fit Ayurveda into this framework, this has been the demand from Ayurveda also, that we should also present our treatments in the same framework. While scientific evidence is required, while we need to also, in whatever way possible, explain mechanisms, to try to force fit Ayurveda. Okay, when we did a study which was discussed a little earlier of rheumatoid arthritis with NIH, we were asked to choose one formulation for rheumatoid arthritis, but we all resisted. We said in Ayurveda, there is no single formulation for a disease. We have to customize. It is according to avastha of the disease. Same disease in different patients may be slightly different. So we need a comprehensive algorithm or a Chikitsa Sutra with which we are treating. So please assess our Chikitsa Sutra, our Prayoga, because in Ayurveda we say it is not the Aushadha that works, but the Prayoga that works. Prayoga Shamayed Vyadhim, not Aushadha Shamayed Vyadhim. Prayoga Shamayed Vyadhim Yonyamanyam Udirayed Nasav Vishuddha Shuddhastu Shamayed Yenna Koped. So Ayurveda is about Prayoga. So it's a protocol, and that protocol is having multiple components. And that is what I'm trying to convey through this other image. Ayurveda physician is like Arjuna. You know, the difficulty of Arjuna is that he is asked to shoot the eye of a fish that is moving on a, on a circle which is fixed to a rod. And Arjuna is not allowed to look at the fish directly. He has to look at a reflection of the fish on a vessel of water that is kept below. And the fish is moving, and he has to hit the eye of the fish. Now, I have always felt like when we are working as a clinician, our dilemma is like Arjuna's dilemma. Avastha vidhanameva chikitsa. We are looking at the body as in a continuous movement in fluid dynamism. Muhur muhur avekshanam, purusham purusham vikshya. These are three great principles of Ayurvedic treatment which I have learned. One is purusham purusham vikshya, individualize. Then muhur muhur aveksha, continuously monitor the patient stage by stage. Why? Because avastha vidhanameva chikitsa. Because according to avastha, the treatment has to be modified. You are responding. So in our clinical trial, we told, if I give one medicine from the beginning to the end of the trial, it is against Ayurveda, because one person, I have to first do some Amapajana. After Amapajana, I have to do some Dosha Shamana. Then I have to do Brahmana. Then I have to do Rasayana. That is how I treat a disease. I cannot just give one medicine from the beginning to the end and say rheumatoid arthritis will be cured. So in different people, Amapajana, in some persons, it may happen in 3 days. Another person, it may take 7 days. Some others, Dashaha may be required. So how can I put the same protocol for all the patients? But in that study, I must say it is possible to do such studies also. In our study, they allowed us to make these modifications. This Purusham Purusham Vikshya approach, the Muhur Muhur Aveksha approach, because in a clinical trial, according to modern medicine, that is the three features of our clinical trial. The study designed was done by modern doctors, but we told them, you have to adjust the protocol according to our treatment. We will not change our treatment according to your protocol. That was the principle. So I believe that when we bring research perspectives in Ayurveda, it should be very clearly based on our principles of treatment, our way of understanding the body. Otherwise, we are doing waste research. It It may create some small, ripples, but it will not create an impact. It is difficult to do such studies, but our experience has been very favorable. Our paper got also recommended as a blueprint by one of the most critical persons of complementary and alternative medicine, Edzard Ernst. He has never said anything positive about complementary alternative medicine, and he has written so many critical papers on Ayurveda. But when he read our paper, he asked us, I want to write a commentary on your paper. We thought he is going to criticize us. But we were surprised when he said that, these authors of this paper have tried to work around the challenges of testing traditional medicine. Such modifications are welcome. And so he recommended our paper as a blueprint. So we can, impact even the most critical people, I think, if we are a little bit careful. So modern researchers, Ayurveda researchers can collaborate, come together, and preserve the holistic approach of Ayurveda and bring the rigor of science. This is the method. And I think at a PhD level, when we have a little bit more time, at PG level, students have only 1 year to do their work. In that short period, we should not give them very complex problems. They are only beginning with the baby lessons of research. So the focus should be on how to do honest research and how to do, basic work. But at PhD level, it's just a period where you are proving yourself to become a researcher. So in this period, you can think of some innovative work also. So this is the difference in Ayurveda and modern medicine. So muhur avekshanam. So when the trial started, they said we need to see the patients only thrice, at baseline, midpoint, and endpoint in 9 months. But as Ayurveda doctors, we said that is not enough for us. We need to see the patients every 2 weeks because we may have to modify the medicines based on response. So they agreed. In our trial, we had to see the patients more frequently. This is muhur aveksha concept. We didn't give the exactly same treatment to all patients. We changed according to responses. If amapajana has happened, then we give the next to dosha shamana treatment. Once dosha shamana has happened to some extent, we plan brahmana treatment. Then we go for rasayana treatment. If pajana shodhana is enough, that is given. Or if drastic shodhana is needed, then we have to give that. That is according to the individual. So if we create an algorithm or a treatment protocol, which is exactly what I think is needed for dealing with Medho Roga also today, such models are needed. Because today, there is a fad, either diet fad, Atkins diet, keto diet, or intermittent fasting or workout. Everything is being fixed, and so many people are following all these. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to these kind of diseases. Garcinia, single herbs are being promoted as a magical remedy for obesity, and people are swallowing it because if we are trying to have a quick fix. What is needed from Ayurveda is I think Ayurveda has that potential to give a balanced outlook here and will help people to develop customized and more effective regimens that can be more meaningful in the long run. So I will come back to that later. Now, I want to point out here, when you look at the difference between BAMS, PG, this is the process of knowledge building in Ayurveda, which I've tried to construct from textual descriptions. Everything starts with Aptobadesha, but doesn't end there. You start with Aptobadesha and you should end when you yourself become an Apta and you are able to contribute something to the Aptobadesha. This is a knowledge cycle. Please remember that Charaka Samhita is the notes of a student. The first textbook of Ayurveda is the notes of a student, Agnivesha. So that much student oriented, student empowerment was the focus in our tradition. And Agnivesha student should become, now Agnivesha, that name changed to Charaka. After that, our tradition became very rigid. So originally it was that the teacher empowers the student so much so that the student's notes became known in his name only. Actually, it is Agnivesha Tantra, but Agnivesha tells Itiha Maha Bhagavan Atraya. It is all the teachings of my teacher, but the name Agnivesha was preserved. So Agnivesha also becomes an apta in the process of learning. That is the spirit of learning. So when you do aptopadesha, purvam aptopadesha the jnanam. Before you do your own inquiry, you must understand aptopadesha thoroughly. So a lot of time and effort. This is not the time of questioning. It is a time of understanding. After you have obtained jnana of Aptopadesha, you become an adhikari to ask questions. So Purvam Aptopadeshat jnanam tata pratyakshanumanabhyam parikshopapadyate. So when you get when you have understood Aptopadesha thoroughly, you are said to be a jnani. Once you have jnanavatam, dvitha pariksha, once you have jnana, then you have to do pratyaksha and anumana. You must verify it yourself. Tada pratyaksha anumanabhyam parikshopapadyate. And when you do that, and pratyaksha anumana, nothing. Pratyaksha means observing. Anumana means inferring, arriving at a conclusion through analysis and interpretation of your observations. And once you do that, and you have internalized the Aptopadesha, now it is not just Aptopadesha for me, it is my own experience because I have verified it through Pratyaksha and Anumana. Now I reach the stage of Vijnanam. Now I'm not just a Jnani, but I'm a Vijnani. A Jnani knows what is Aptopadesha. Vijnani has experienced that Aptopadesha. And a person who has that Vijnana, he is capable of doing what is called as Yukti. He can create new innovations. Swayam Kriti. Tatvathigata Shastrartho Drishtakarma Swayam Kriti. And once you have applied it, made your own innovations, because every time you see a new patient, you are doing a yukti, it is an innovation. Every new person is a new experience for a real physician. In modern medicine, we are told what works for one person will work for everybody. In Ayurveda, we say what works for one person may not work for another. There may be some common elements, but the real treatment comes when you fix it for that individual. Because every individual is new. It is a new experience. It's a new life. And that is yukti in Ayurveda. That is why Swabudhyevam Sahasrani Kotirvapi Vikalpayed. You create thousands and crores of formulations. Bahudravya Vikalpatvad. Yoga Sankhyana Vidyada. Charaka Samhita clearly tells us don't treat with the medicines that are described in my book. Yogaireva Chikitsanhi Deshadhyatnyo Aparadhyati. There is, I was surprised when I read this the first time. Here is Charaka saying, don't follow what I have written, use your own intelligence. Satyevamapi nirdeshe kuryaduhya swayam dhiya. Even when I have told these things, don't follow it blindly. Kuryaduhya swayam dhiya. Vagbhada also says, Dishanaya sheshamapi swayamuheda buddhiman. Na shastramatra sharano na cha analochidagamaha. So Ayurvedic texts are giving only guidelines. Charaka clearly says, Buddhimadam tu swanumana yukti kushalanam anuktartha jnanaya. That anuktartha, swayankrititvam. Vikalpana of Sahasra Koti. In Kerala, we had Sahasra Yoga. It's symbolic. It means the physicians who applied and created new formulations. They are the creative physicians. So Ayurveda is a creative science. It's a science of innovation. Somehow that has been lost in the fatigue of a lot of time invasions and all that, and that is what we need to revive today. And I think PhD work is that platform where such innovative thinking can be brought back into the tradition of Ayurveda. So with this, I want to say, like in BAMS, our goal should be to become jnanis. Don't worry too much about questioning. Try to understand. In BMS, etavad helam alpabuddhinam vyavaharaya. It doesn't mean we are alpabuddhis. Our buddhis are not well pruned. You need a shastrakrita mati. So study the shastra as thoroughly as possible during BMS. You become jnanis. In PG level, do pratyaksha anumana. You verify what has been studied in BMS. Now it is the time for questioning, pariksha. That should be the goal of PG. But in PhD, you are already a Vijnani. Now you must do Yukti, you must do new creative work. And you must come up with some finding that would make you also an Apta. You contribute, Tantra Rachana, you have to create. That is what Agnivesha did. At that level, he himself wrote a book. At that stage, you are becoming an authority now because you have Aptopadesha, you have the experience of it, you have verified it, and you have applied it, you have made new innovations. Now you are an adhikari to write a tantra, which will become, you contribute to that Aptopadesha, and it continues. So this is a very dynamic and beautiful framework that we are able to get from even textbooks like Charaka Samhita. of how knowledge is to be built. So these are the steps. And this is matching with modern idea of research also, more or less. Everything today also starts with literature review. This is studying Aptopadeshat Jnanam. You must be a well-read person. You must read all the prior literature before you can ask questions. And once you get that update knowledge, you are a jnani of that area. You have done enough literature review. Then you start the research question and hypothesis, which is similar to Pariksha in Ayurveda. And then you do the observation and data collection and data interpretation analysis. Here, whatever modern tools are available, we can add on to this process. But let our research be inspired by our samhitas itself. This is my humble, contention. And then you have Vijnanam, then you have translational research, where you are bringing new innovations, practice, and then that becomes codified as new knowledge. If in this way we nurture, the Ayurvedic knowledge system can grow, I think, in a very powerful way. And also we can use modern tools in a much more effective manner. Now, there is also another framework. This is already proposed by Adi Shankaracharya, but is very relevant, because even our spiritual systems are very rigorous and knowledge oriented. He says that Shastra is to be validated at 3 levels: Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. All the 3 should be there. Shruti is documented evidence. The documented evidence you can use only if you have a good yukti on that. You cannot blindly follow the Shruti. There should be a yukti in using that Shruti. There is no use whatever yukti you have if it doesn't lead to an anubhava or an actual experience. So Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava, when they are aligned together, that is what in our tradition we call as evidence. What is experienced, we understand the rationale and we are able to connect it to the Shruti. Or what is there in the Shruti, we know the rationale behind it and we are able to translate it into actual experience. Yeah, I'm sorry for that brief interruption. I just had to silence my phone. So this is also a very, very, very good framework. So sometimes when we are doing research, we are basing it only on a textual reference, the yukti of which we do not adequately understand, which we may not have any practice at all. Many Ayurvedic practices are already in vogue. We have already all the 3, Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. Only thing is we have to give it evidence in the form of modern knowledge. That is another thing. I believe that modern studies are only an add-on to Ayurvedic evidence. The primary evidence is within our tradition. It should come from our framework. And we shouldn't say we don't want any modern evidence, because it is necessary today to be able to communicate more effectively. But we must understand scientific studies can only add on. Like can you imagine if they say that RCT type of evidence is needed in Ayurveda, even 200 years later, we will not have done the RCT work. How much money is required? Our RCT required crores of rupees at that time. 8 years it took. If all the practices in Ayurveda were going to be studied by RCTs, then we would never reach anywhere. So Ayurvedic treatment is complex. It is a combination of all these things. So we cannot, while individual components are important, we cannot choose any one component and say with this we can handle a disease. There is a challenge in Ayurveda to show what are the roles of individual components, but then they all work together. So this algorithm-based approach, studying, this is now being called as whole system research or complex system research. That kind of models are needed in Ayurveda. And I think even with relation to Medho Roga, that is what I will try to discuss in the rest of the thing. So complex formulations too. So in Ayurveda, we always use formulations with many ingredients. We still do not fully understand how they work. When you do research, you simplify it to few ingredients, you broke it down to phytochemicals, you fractionate, you isolate, and then you miss the whole thing of how that drug works according to Ayurveda. If you see, the modern drug research and Ayurvedic research are going in opposite directions. In Ayurveda, we take single ingredients, we mix them into simple formulation or complex formulations or super formulations. A yoga is a simple formulation, yojana. A gana is ganana. Through computation, we have created a formulation. But today, all research methods are available. You can study anything only if you break it down into single molecules and one active principle or some marker. And then we are trying to explain the complexity of such a formulation. It's not possible. There are new methods emerging like network pharmacology, isobologram, where we see how molecules interact and produce effects. But the science today is not well developed enough for us to fully understand, the complexity of Ayurvedic formulations. We must keep this in mind and still continue to work with whatever tools are available. So we need, actually, if we are going to use modern technology to bring Ayurvedic medicines, I think the term reverse pharmacology needs a new interpretation. We should not just go back, reduce Ayurvedic formulations to few chemicals. We have to shift from molecules to molecular cocktails. This thinking is also emerging in modern medicine. It's not single molecules, but molecular cocktails. Through network pharmacology, it is possible to a greater extent now to understand how molecules work together. And the future of pharmacology in Ayurveda will be this new method of explaining molecular combinatorics, how molecules combine together to produce effects, that are very complex and that have system biology effects that work on this whole network of the physiology of the body. So these are some thoughts that I wanted to share first, because unless we look at research from this perspective, I don't think the real benefits of Ayurveda can be brought out to society. So to conclude this part, BAMS is about Vyavahara, understanding Aptopadesha. Make a good clinician. Show them at this stage that what Aptopadesha works and you can treat patients. Don't tax the BAMS student with too much of hypercritical thinking and all that. They should get enough faith and confidence that these are practical things. The next is the level of MD Shastra, personal verification by Pratyaksha Anumana. They should be encouraged to verify what is there in the Shastra. They should become Vijnanis. But at PhD level, we should go into the level of Tattva, new discovery, innovation, Swayam Kreditvam Yukti. So this is the whole idea. Now let us to Medovahasrotas. Medas is such an important dhatu in the body because according to Ayurveda, the body is Shuddha, Shita, Snigdha Guna. Shariram is Shuddha, Shita Guna. Kapha, that is the basis for health. That is why Kapha Prakriti lives longer. So having Shuddha Sneha in the body is considered so essential for our health. I think this is a very, very important concept of Ayurveda. Today, we have considered Medas as the villain because of all this pandemic of Medo Rogas, obesity. Ayurveda, first of all, gives us a very important perspective saying, Sneha Saroyam Purushaha. Medas means Medyadi Snihyati iti Medaha. That which nourishes or enriches the Sneha of the body. And the Purusha is a Sneha Saroyam Purusha. Pranascha Sneha Bhuyishtaha. Sneha Sadhyascha Bhavanti. So in Ayurveda, it is very, very important that for the health of the body, we must have Shuddha Medas. So when we are saying Medo Roga, it is Vikrita Medas that is creating all the problem. And one very, very important thing that we have to think about is also some of the clear concepts in Ayurveda we must bring about to the forefront when we are doing research on Medo Rogas. That is what I think Ayurveda can contribute. A way to, because completely eliminating Medas from the body is not the solution. A lot of modern drugs which are working against Medas is creating a lot of problems. I just read in the FDA website a warning about statins. It's a very ironical situation that in statins, in many people, especially old people, it is creating, memory loss. It is affecting the brain. We know that brain, although it makes up only 2% of the body's weight, 25% of the brain is cholesterol. It is fat. And if you indiscriminately try to remove fat from the body, it affects the brain. A lot of old age problems today are happening also because of Vikrita Medas. We need Shuddha Medas in the body. Sneha Saroyam Purusha. That is the first goal. The goal is to bring back Shuddha Medas into the system. So, in order to protect the heart, that is our problem here today. All this dilemma has come to the point where whether you want to protect your heart or brain. If you try to remove all the fat by to protect your heart, your brain suffers in the process. If you put all the fat to preserve your brain, your heart gets blocked in the process. Now the question is, can we have both our heart and brain? And I think that is the area where Ayurveda shows the way. Shuddha Medas will be protective for not only the heart, but also for the brain. And Ayurveda has given us a method of how to use Sneha in the correct way. Snehana procedures. This is very, very important. I have also observed Snehapana reducing, cholesterol levels in the body. So Ayurveda has a way to do this. I think that has to be very much kept in mind, even while we review modern concepts. So we will do that. So, of course, in Ayurveda, there is Medo Vriddhi, Meda Kshaya, and Medo Dushti, out of which Medo Dushti is the most difficult problem because it is associated with a lot of imbalance in the overall physiology. It is not just a simple Vriddhi of the Medas. And this requires also a lot of attention. Now, I want to point out one of the basic things in Ayurveda is about looking at the physiology in a balanced way. We knew where Sneha is harmful and where Sneha is beneficial. Everywhere that is made clear. In Ayurveda, there is no debate whether ghee is good or bad. It is both good and bad. Pakveshu dosheshu amridam tad vishopamam anyatha. So this is a very big contrast. Pakveshu dosheshu amridam. When the doshas are pakwa, it is like amridam. Tad vishopamam anyatha. Otherwise, it is like poison. So what we have to correct is our metabolism according to Ayurveda. If we correct our metabolism, if our body is in a state where you can receive that sneha in a proper manner and assimilate it, then sneha is not harmful. But if our metabolism is not correct, if our Agni is not correct, if there is ama in the system already, if our dhatu paga is not correct, then whatever medas which we add into the system will harm us. So this, I think, is a very interesting perspective that Ayurveda gives, and this should be at the root. So now what I'm trying to point out is what is the problem today? Because when we are doing research in Ayurveda, it should be able to address some unmet needs. So now the question is, if I'm going to do research in Medo Roga, will it be of any use to society? In fact, obesity-related morbidity and mortality is rising world over. So it is a complex disease. It's not just about accumulation of fat. It is not even just cosmetic concern. This is a real medical problem, which people tend to ignore because it grows slowly over a period of time. It is a cause for morbidity because it is a breeding ground for very severe diseases, which are responsible for 70–80% of morbidity and mortality in the developed world, and also in the other countries now, like heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer. Among the four major, NCDs, heart disease, cancer. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the developed world, followed by cancer, and then respiratory diseases. Obesity can also cause respiratory disease, even COPD, and then we also have heart disease, diabetes, respiratory disease, and cancer. Together, these four account for 70% of the world's NCD burden. And if we are able to provide a solution here, I mean, we are taking care of the major health problem of the world itself. So BMI, here I think we have to bring in a lot of Ayurvedic concepts. BMI is a reasonable estimate of body fat, but it cannot measure body fat directly. So, many muscular athletes may have a BMI in obesity category, even though they don't have excess body fat. So Ayurvedic concept of Prakriti should be taken. I think here we can do a lot of new work to give new guidelines for BMI based on Prakriti, and a direct measurement of that. Exact scan is one of the ways in which you can really directly measure the fat of the body, but it is very expensive. So I think here there is some innovation possibility in Ayurveda. Now, excess body weight is a global epidemic. It is a pandemic. We are today talking about COVID-19 as a pandemic, but this is a silent pandemic already. We are not realizing that obesity is already a global pandemic. It has been termed as a pandemic. And 1.1 billion worldwide adults and 10% of children are overweight or obese. Children are becoming overweight or obese. This is an extremely great matter of concern. And 63 countries study recently estimated that 40% of men and 30% of women were overweight. So it's even more dangerous than COVID-19. Because of all this publicity, we are considering giving importance. Of course, it is an acute problem, but obesity is also a chronic problem. So don't we need to do research? I think if Ayurveda community works very carefully in this and bring out some very well thought out problems, we could make a great global impact. So 24% of men and 27% of women were obese. So as we know in Ayurveda, we say first there is Kapha Vriddhi, and then comes the Medo Vriddhi, Kapha Medo, and they are all brought together. So generalized Kapha Vriddhi, we can maybe compare with overweight. When they become obese, there is Medo Dushti and also additional Medo Vriddhi, which actually compounds the problem and makes the situation very difficult. So these are problems like fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, high blood pressure. And we all know that when many of these things come together, we call it also as a metabolic syndrome. So there are some guidelines on how much fat we should have. So all these tools, I'm just presenting this to say we can use these tools, but bring them within the Ayurvedic framework of Prakriti and other things. Otherwise, we'll be harming some people by giving them unrealistic targets for reducing body weight and body fat. So this slide tells us age group wise. I'm not reading everything out, just you can find it anywhere, but this is all well worked out. What is high fat percentage? Now there are many tools that are available to monitor also body fat, which calculate body fat percentage. So on the other hand, low fat is also a problem. So the Ayurvedic framework of Meda Kshaya, Medo Vriddhi, Medo Dushti is a very good framework for us to discuss Medo Roga. And we can bring in some of these measurable parameters also into this and interpret that from the Ayurvedic viewpoint. Such kind of guidelines have not yet been made available. And they should be made publicly available. There should be a consensus within the Ayurvedic community of how we interpret and understand Medo Roga in today's context, using Ayurvedic framework and including, Ayurvedic approach of interpreting BMI, Ayurvedic approach of interpreting fat percentage and giving guidelines what to do. And this is definitely necessary because right now it's a lot of misinformation that is circulating. People are swallowing Garcinia or, you have that Lavana Thailam, and these kind of individual things are spreading quite a lot. So low fat disorders are also a problem. While we are talking about Medo Roga, we cannot just only think about obesity, malnutrition, decreased immune function, increased risk of surgical complications, osteoporosis. It's interesting that Meda Chaya leads to osteoporosis. According to Ayurveda, after Medas comes Asti. So we can see that correlation. Muscle and Medas are also very much interlinked together. And infertility is there seen in low fat disorders also. And then, of course, we have dyslipidemia, which is also a big problem. And here I would like to talk about obesity with relation to what you call as metabolically healthy obese people, metabolically unhealthy obese people. This is a very interesting concept. And then we will come into the Ayurvedic aspect. So dyslipidemia is defined as having blood lipid levels that are too high or low. So it is not a question of high or low. It is a Vaishamya actually. So here, in Ayurveda, if you look at LDH and LDL and HDL, I think some of our concept of Koshta Shakha Gadi and Shakha Koshta Gadi are very important. In my opinion, LDL represents a Koshta Shakha Gadi, which means more lipid is going in and being stored. and HDL means Shakha Koshtagati, which is a opposite movement. So this ratio between HDL and LDL is a good index to know how the Koshta Shakha Gati is working in the system. In fact, most of the Ahita Charanad, Koshtad Shakhasti Marmani. So all obesity is based on Ahita Charana, Ahita Ahara Vihara. And this is promoting a Shakha, Koshta to Shakha Gati, which is highlighted by an increase in LDL cholesterol. So doing Lekhaniya medicines, bringing the doshas back, because one of the problems is Medo Roga, you have to do Pachana exercise. It's not easy to do Shodhana of the Medo Dhatu. So how do we correct this? From an Ayurvedic perspective, there are a lot of areas where we can think. Today, I just wanted to stimulate some areas where new research can be done. This is for PhD scholars. So I'm just trying to throw some random ideas here and there where some new thoughts and new directions could be taken. And of course, we have primary and secondary dyslipidemia, one which is inherited. And it is interesting that in Ayurveda, also in Charaka Samhita, Bija dosha is also mentioned as a cause for Atistaulium, apart from both were very clearly recognized in classical Ayurvedic texts. Now, this is the key point here, why we should do research in Medo Roga is the burden of dyslipidemia is very high. 80% of lipid disorders are related to diet and lifestyle, and only 20% are related to familial inheritance. So the biggest challenge today is that when we say research, now how should we look at it? Should we work on that one single formulation that will drive away obesity and Medo Roga from the world? Because that is what modern pharmacological research is still focusing on, that are trying to interfere with our metabolic processes. And we will see some of the medicines that are available today. They are all creating very serious unwanted effects. Is that the way? The fact is that modern medicine also agrees that the best way to treat obesity is to eat a healthy, reduced calorie diet and exercise regularly. But modern doctors also say that once it gets established, it is very, very difficult to manage or reverse obesity. And the biggest challenge with management of obesity is because it requires a lot of personal effort from the person. If you can pop a pill and solve the problem, it is very easy. Now, is that the approach? What kind of research should we do in Ayurveda? Should we entirely focus on pharmacological interventions that Ayurveda has to offer, maybe develop one formulation that can be widely circulated? Or should we work on developing a very balanced protocol which is customizable? Because what I have understood when it comes to Medo Roga is we need a lot of customization. Metabolic pathways, there are some studies which have shown, I will just refer to that a little later, how there are variations between individuals. The big challenge today is people are trying to use so many things. The wrong diet, people end up using wrong diet. People end up using wrong medications, wrong advices. Even in the field of diet, there is a lot of confusion in modern medicine. There are people who say carbohydrates are the problem. There are others who ask to reduce fats. Even within fats, there are debates about what type of fat is good or what type of fat is bad. Like even coconut oil has figured in this big debate, but now the views are changing. It's much more complex than we think. So people really want what Ayurveda we have been doing most of the time is adding to this confusion. I can say that obesity is a field of a lot of misinformation spreading because a lot of new research is happening, new findings are there, and they are all being pushed in and people are getting confused. What to eat, what not to eat. So some clear, sane guidance is very much required here, right from exercise to diet choices to pharmacological interventions to even mindset. I mean, engineering the mind. Only when we combine all these things together, according to individual for different stages of life, for different occupations, such a kind of a mosaic of approach is what I would like to recommend that should come from Ayurveda to deal with this pandemic. And if such a method comes, a very well-defined algorithm where people are able to customize on the basis of well-defined parameters, a new yukti, it's not a new yukti, a yukti that is applicable, because buddhi pasyadiya bhavan bahukarana yogajan, our treatment is based on yukti, bahukarana yogatvam. So that methodology is what we require, in my opinion. So, you know, today, what are the various approaches available? Healthy eating plan, regular physical activity, changing habits, weight management. These are most difficult. People cannot sustain them. Then we have weight loss medicines, weight loss devices, bariatric surgery, special diet. These are the things that people are trying to work out most of the time because they hope to get results very quickly. I mean, that is human psychology. So into this framework, where can we bring in Ayurveda? That is a real question. And how can we initiate research, activities? So healthy eating plan and regular, this here itself, I think Ayurveda can bring in a lot of ideas about how to balance. What are the healthy fats? What are the, fats that we should avoid? In a much more balanced way, the Ayurvedic idea of how to nourish the body with Sneha in a harmless way. I think there is a lot that we can contribute. Even in weight management programs, a Prakriti-based approach, which can be customized for different individuals, is very much necessary today. And when it comes to weight loss medicines, in Ayurveda, we have very clear idea about Shleshma Medohara medicine, Lekhaniya medicine, where to use what without disturbing the whole body. Today, many of these things are water pills, removing just the water from the system, or bringing drastic interference with the metabolism of the body. All these can have untoward effects. So these are not the approaches I think that we should follow. Now, you look at many of the drugs that are available. There are some FDA-approved pharmacological interventions for obesity, and these are being used sometimes for drastic interventions, maybe with the hope of preventing obesity growing into some serious disease. But all of these are, troubled with a lot of unwanted side effects and problems. So they are not solutions. When it comes to lifestyle and dietary adjustments, there are some general guidelines that are available. And I think both in Ayurveda and modern medicine, there would be some agreement at a basic level. But the Ayurvedic concept of Ahara Vidhi is also having its unique approaches. How we can use fats more safely. So those bringing new recipes, combinations, I think this is an area where we can do a lot. There are also pharmacological interventions for dyslipidemia, and I said both statin and non-statin drugs are there. But as I was trying to point out, many of these can have deleterious effect because they also interfere with the natural, fat metabolism in the body. They sometimes harm your brain and have many other unwanted results. So with this framework, I would like to go to the last part of my discussion where I would like to suggest what is the strength of Ayurveda here. So when you look at Medova Srotas, there are a lot of thoughts that we have to go into, and I'm just trying to share why in Ayurveda Vrikkau is mentioned, as the Mula of Srotas. So Mula, Chakrapani says, is the Prabhavasthana of the Srotas. And why it is mentioned? Because when the Mula is affected, the results are much more pronounced. So we see Sushruta, Charaka, Vakbada, they have some variations in opinion. Sushruta, everybody agrees about Vrikka, but then the second one is Vapavahanam in Charaka, Kati in Sushruta, and Mamsam in Vagbhada. That has not been much discussed. Vagbhada in Ashtanga Sangraha tells that Mamsam is the fruit. So if you look at it, even through modern observations, we find there is a lot of interesting findings. So what is the study of purpose of studying Mula? Chakrapani says he's helpless. He's telling it's difficult. So I think we need to explore this further. He's trying to resolve the differences of opinion between Charaka and Sushruta. And he finally says, Tatra atindriyartha darsigamya nasmad vidanam buddhaya prabhavandi. Chakravarti is telling his his helplessness, saying, this is atindriya grahyam and my intelligence is not working here. So this was a problem in those days also. They did not fully understand this. And there is a, at least Charaka, Sushruta, they had their own ideas, but many of the commentators are struggling to explain. So this is something which we need to study further. And some thoughts I would like to share here. How does Rikka become the Mula of Medova Srotas? Now here we know apple-shaped belly and pear-shaped obesity. These two things are well understood today. So apple-shaped people are those who carry more fat around their bellies than their hips. And now it is said that people who carry more fat in their bellies are at higher risk of kidney disease. Now, when you look at the Mula of the Medova Srotas, Vrikka, Vapavahana, then, Kati and Mamsa, you can see that these are the areas where fat is deposited. Central obesity, Vapavahanam. And then Kati is the hip area. And then Mamsa is all the subcutaneous fat which is present, in between the muscles in our arms. So between the three acharyas, they have given us all the locations in the body where fat is deposited as the Mula. And Vrikka seems to have some role in the regulation. So they have found that for each 1 unit increase in waist to hip ratio, there is a loss of blood flow through the kidney's tiniest filters, the glomeruli, of about 4 millimeters per minute. So if your hip to waist ratio is changing, there is an immediate impact in the blood flow into the kidneys. So there is a clear link between, the way fat is deposited. So it is fascinating. If you synthesize Charaka, Sushruta and Vakpada, we get a more complete picture of Medova Srotas. So fat in the belly or Vapavahana, Charaka is talking about the pathological danger of Vapavahana being a storage of fat, whereas fat around the hip is not so problematic. So from Charaka, we get the possibility of apple-shaped obesity. In Sushruta, we get the possibility of Kati, which is leading to pear-shaped obesity. So the knowledge of Mula of Srotas is helpful for Prakopa Vijnanam. So when we synthesize this, we know if the Medas increases in Kati, Sushruta is probably talking about a natural situation, whereas Charaka is talking about the possibility of a pathological increase in the Vapavahana, which can lead to also kidney problem. So where the fat is deposited can have an impact on the kidneys. So this is a very interesting finding. So now all these correlations are there in the text like dots. We have to fill all those dots, and many empirical observations today are, and also it doesn't mean that one Srota should have only one Mula or two Mulas. It is just that those important points which can help us in understanding the Prakopajnana of that Srotas, all that can be considered as Mulas according to Chakravarti. So now more about kidneys and fat. Researchers are not sure why belly fat might be bad for kidneys. And the study doesn't show that abdominal fat is directly responsible. But storing fat in the midsection, especially around the liver, strongly also increases the risk for heart disease and diabetes, both of which are linked to kidney disease. The Journal of American Society of Nephrology has clearly, published these findings, and they say that both saturated fat and cholesterol play an important role in maintaining kidney function, as do the omega. So Rakta Meda Prabhavam, that concept of kidney itself coming from Rakta and Medas, and the role of both saturated fat and cholesterol and omega-3 fatty acids in maintaining kidney function, this correlation is really very, very, very interesting. So the problem is we should try to go from Ayurveda to modern empirical knowledge, rather than what we are sometimes making a mistake is we study some modern thing, then try to read that into Ayurveda. Why can't we think the other way around? Then many, many things are waiting for us to be discovered. Because modern medicine is just information, scattered information. Ayurveda gives you the thread to put them together and give the complete picture. So that is another approach which I would suggest we should take in Now, the next point is metabolically unhealthy obesity. Metabolically healthy obesity. So a person, today this distinction is very different. A lot of people think that if their blood values are normal, even if they are obese or overweight, it's okay. Even I was thinking like that at one point of time with the Ayurvedic idea of Shuddha Sneha. So metabolically, if the person is healthy, blood values, everything normal, being overweight is not a problem. But we need to revisit this also. Maybe when we bring our concept of Prakriti, we can bring more granularity here. So if a person has obesity, low levels of HDL cholesterol, high levels of triglycerides, high blood pressure, and high blood glucose, then we say that a person is metabolically unhealthy obese. Now, there is metabolically healthy obesity where if they have normal blood pressure, normal C-reactive protein, triglycerides or triacylglycerols, low density cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, hemoglobin A1C, if at least 4 of these are normal, we normally tell them as metabolically healthy obesity. So we have this classification: metabolically healthy non-obesity, metabolically unhealthy non-obesity, MHO, So this, from Ayurvedic point of view, Chaya, Vriddhi, Kopa, this concept is very helpful here. Dosha Chayam, it's a gradual process. So what new research is telling us is that metabolically healthy obesity is also risky. They eventually grow into metabolically unhealthy obesity. But these are Kriya Kalas from an Ayurvedic point of view. So we can have specific regimens for these varied stages of the manifestation of, fat disorders. So what has been found is that results suggest that individuals with MHO were at higher risk of diabetes, fatal atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, heart failure, even respiratory diseases. Where even so, it doesn't mean you cannot just go by blood values. You need to look at the whole thing. So these are the risks. Even if you are metabolically healthy, if you are obese, your risk for diabetes, heart attack, heart failure, respiratory disease, COPD, this is all very high. Now in Ayurveda, we have very, very interesting concepts. Guru Chapatarpanam Sthule Viparitam Hitam Krishe. So many new ideas can be brought here. Guru Apatarpana. One of the ways, glycemic index. Guru Apatarpana means that which has a low glycemic index, which will not cause a sudden surge in the fluid. Lakhu is that we can see which suddenly gets absorbed and it can cause a spike in the sugar levels. So Lakhu Apatarpana, Lakhu Santarpana gives us a kind of scale to decide what type of foods are most suitable for Sthaulya. So this is an area which we can, do more work and bring out some guidelines and framework for choosing the appropriate diet. I think this is one of the very interesting concepts that Ayurveda gives, which should be looked into for more research work. So Prameha and diabetes, the link has been discussed, which needs to be, explored into Bahu Abadham Medaha, Abadha Medas and Bahutva of the Medas. These are again two interesting concepts. I'm not going into the details. I can see the time. I just wanted to point out the sources that we should look into very carefully. Obesity has been described well in Sushruta. Sushruta's description is matching very well with the modern concept of, how obesity develops. Kleshmalahara sevino, adhyashanashilस्य व्यायामिनो दिवास्वप्नरतस्य चाम एव अन्नरसो मधुरतरश्च sharirama. So that concept of madhurataratvam can be correlated very much to modern ideas in the process of the whole development of, high fat cholesterol levels in the system and atistaulyam. Charaka has also given us very interesting concepts. He has even told us in great detail how each outcomes happen, how obesity leads to different problems, how it can reduce, lifespan also. Ayusho hrasaha, he has mentioned. Javoparo, the respiratory problem. Prithravyavayada, daurbalya, daurgandhyam, svedava bodha, chudina matram, pipa. So all these things are described, and Charaka tells us also the mechanism of how this happens. So these also will help us to really construct the whole framework. And he also gives very interesting discussions on how Atyagni, the situation of Atyagni, how this becomes a vicious circle. These are all known to us. I'm not going into it. And the Chikitsa Sutra is also given here very, very beautifully. But now, how do we bring this into a research framework? So, like for example, here, Vada Ghranya Annapanani, Sleshmo Medo Haranicha. This is where I think Ayurveda has a clear advantage. We have understood how, because obesity is a complex disease, we need to bring many elements together. That has not been highlighted from Ayurvedic. Having Sleshma Medo Harani and Vadagnani Annapanani at the same time. This is the challenge of treating obesity. And this principle needs to be really brought out, because Sleshma Medo Hara Dravyas are usually also Vada Vardhaka. But we need here treatments that are Vadagnani and at the same time Medoharani, Ruchoshna, Vastayastikshna, Rukshani, Udvartanani cha. So this alternate and balanced way of doing the treatment and choosing the right type of foods and medicines. So I will just show, the research has shown that there are so many herbs, so many formulations that are effective. Even Haridhi is effective in dyslipidemia. But my question is, why is it that we are not able to bring out a package of treatment that can be globally accepted? That is where the missing links are. How can we put them all together into a full protocol? This is not only true for Medo Rogas, but for many other diseases. We have not been able to do this. Cancer is one disease where so many herbs and drugs have been found to be effective at in vitro level, at preliminary studies, but we don't have it translated into clinical practice. So this is called as translational research. When we have a lot of basic science research showing good potential, but we are not able to translate it into clinical practice, that means there is a gap of translational research. Microbiology is another area where in Ayurveda, if you look at, go and do some PubMed search, so many herbs have been said to be active against so many microbes, but still we do not have a single antimicrobial agent that we can publicly say this will definitely work against this microbe. So there is a translational gap. And even in Medo Roga, we will come to the same situation. Gugulipid was discovered so many years ago, and there was a lot of hue and cry about it, but now it has disappeared. People are selling it, but it is not able to compete with statin, or if we are able to offer an alternative to statin, not as a single drug, but as a well-organized treatment plan, then it will be very game-changing. Another important point that we need to make out is also we should be realistic, because Ayurveda, I think, was a very realistic system. It said, Nahi sthulasya bheshajam. This is very important to keep in mind. A multi-pronged strategy is required. A very long-term treatment is required. Even if we are able to, reduce the progression of obesity into these killer diseases. So the approach has to be at multiple levels. We will need multiple protocols to address different kind of people, because when people's participation is so much involved in the success of the treatment, we cannot expect mass modification of lifestyle and diet and all that. It will not happen. That is why even today there is a debate whether vaccination is needed. Why not Ayurvedic approach of lifestyle for managing COVID? The problem is people will not follow that. So we need a balance of dietary and lifestyle measures and supportive pharmacological interventions. And Ayurveda can offer that whole spectrum. That I think is our strength. Because, Dean Ornish discovered some decades back that coronary artery blockage can be reversed purely by diet. He's a cardiologist. But that is not becoming popular because a pure diet approach, today's world, people will not follow. A direct trial done in Europe has shown that just by reducing weight, you can cure early diabetes completely. Even patients who were dependent on medicines were able to withdraw it. In fact, that study tells that if you start medications, even as soon as you get diabetes or you have pre-diabetes, then you are going to become permanently diabetic. So, sadhya yapya parityajyaha. Kapaja stage of prameha is sadhya. That is being proven again. So some of the Ayurvedic concepts are very fundamental. Thaulya is going to be a challenge until mass behavioral, modifications are made. So we should not expect that one medicine or one herb or one formulation will cure it. So we have to accept the fact, and in all our research, this reality should be reflected. And then we must put forth realistic protocols and procedures, which is an ideal combination of lifestyle, diet, and medications. And less you make diet and lifestyle restrictions, the more medicines will have to be included. So when it comes to non-pharmacological interventions, there is fairly agreement. So I think I have to conclude now. In Ayurveda, we talk about Shleshmala and Medura foods. This needs to be very detailed and analyzed. Today, there are many diets, ketogenic diet, where high fat, adequate protein, low carbohydrate. It's an irony that for reducing obesity, they are also talking about high fat diet. Many of us has compared this to Snehavana. Maybe Snehavana, I've seen in some people that Snehavana is bringing down lipids. Maybe Snehavana is a better approach than Atkins or ketogenic diet to bring down, lipid levels acutely in an acute situation. So that needs to be looked into. Then there is intermittent fasting, the Dvikala Bhojana in Ayurveda, where, when you have a long period between the evening meal and the morning meal, after 12 hours, the body goes into a fat adaptive state, which means the body starts using fat for releasing energy. And so intermittent fasting is, so people are confused. What I wanted to point out is so many approaches spreading around. And from an Ayurvedic point of view, I think we will be able to tell which person, which individual, which prakriti, which desha, what kind of method will be more useful. Such an insight is very much necessary today. So this is a fat adaptive stage. I'm going quickly. In Ayurveda, there are many pharmacological interventions, out of which Shleshma, Medohara, and Lekhaniya formulations could become very good pharmacological support. And there are so many researches that have happened, and the list of formulations and herbs, they are so huge. If you look at our literature, this is the gap I want to point out. I cannot be, we will even be wondering why nobody is using it so widely. So much rich the whole system is, much more options than even available in modern medicine to treat, obesity and Medo Roga. And many of these herbs, at least 75 herbs, have already been studied through modern research also for their effect on, reducing lipids and or in management of obesity. So this is where the need for translational research comes. Now, Prakriti and metabolic pathways. There are studies which have shown that the plasma metabolomics reveal metabolic pathways and Prakriti. So metabolism of different individuals are different. This, I think, is going to be a real strength of Ayurveda when we come for individualized regimens. So neurotransmission and oxidative stress in Vata, in Pitta, xenobiotics metabolic process, in Kapha, there are another aromatic amino acids, sphingolipid and pyrimidine metabolic process. So the metabolic pathways have a correlation to the different Prakritis. So our diet, regimen, pharmacology can all be fine-tuned when we bring also these perspectives from Ayurveda. So let me conclude. Obesity and related diseases are termed a pandemic, and so they are causing great economic burden worldwide. So lifestyle and diet modifications are considered with consensus to be the best method to treat. But there are still a lot of confusions regarding what is the best diet, and some of them are being promoted as a fad. And also there is a question of compliance. People are not going to be so easily compliant with just diet and lifestyle, which is definitely the best way. So pharmacological interventions are needed as support. But the modern pharmacological interventions are too intrusive and too much interfering with the metabolism. It leaves us with a lot of imbalances. Drastic surgical interventions are being also resorted to as a last choice. But this is where I think Ayurveda can fill the unmet need. So we must study the current picture, current understanding, and then bring the Ayurvedic perspective. And especially through translational research and studying the fundamentals of Ayurveda and, critically analyzing modern knowledge that has emerged, we should look into customized multimodal approaches to management of Medo Roga. Single formulations will not work. Single medicines or single formulations cannot be a solution. Staulia is a behavioral problem. And with this perspective, if we engage in research, that I hope I was able to highlight that there are so many avenues, so many areas where new research could be developed. I wanted to leave it at that because this is we are addressing PhD scholars. I just wanted to stimulate some thinking to show that there are many ways in which we can approach research on Medovas, Rodas, and Medorogas. And if we approach it in the right perspective, we could translate these great principles of Ayurveda into solutions that can have an impact on the people's lives and reduce morbidity and mortality from the pandemic of overweight and obesity. Thank you very much. With this, I would like to conclude.
It is always an immeasurable joy to listen to Dr. P. Ramanohar sir's words. I wholeheartedly thank him for this wonderful deliberation, highlighting the different perspectives to conduct research in Medova Shotas. Now, it is open for discussion. I request the participants, if you have any queries, can post it in chat box. And our institution is preparing PhD research database. So henceforth, I request all the PhD scholars and participants to share their PhD titles with us through the Google form that is being shared with you. And whatever the PhD research that has been done so far, or that is being done so far, so you can share with us so that we can prepare a PhD research database and share with all of you. Sir, question, sir, P. Ramanohar sir. What are the parameters to be incorporated according to Ayurveda to assess dyslipidemia? What are the parameters to be incorporated according to Ayurveda to assess dyslipidemia?
Yes. In Ayurveda, we have given of course, Ayurveda is a clinical science. So a lot of keen observations of the clinical presentations of the patient needs to be looked into. And in Ayurveda, we have given minute lakshanas also of Medovaha Sroto Dushti, which needs to be considered. So Tadvan Medas Tathashramam. So the clinical manifestations are very, very important. And they can all be compiled together. The references that I showed from both Charaka and Sushruta should be looked into. Charaka mentions Javoparodha, Krichravyavayata, Daurbalyam, Daurgandhyam, Sweda Batha, Chudida Matram, Pipasadi Yogaha. These are all problems, Ati Sampurnad, Guru Mathura. So we have to look at these clinical symptoms on one side. And I believe also that we can create certain formulas. I have not worked on that, like what is being used to assess risk of diabetes. Many of these factors, depending on their diet, depending on some activities that they are expressing, because Medas is extremely important for Ojas. Medas is a source of energy. Today in modern science also, they are telling that our metabolism has to be flexible. So I think on the one hand, we have to work on these clinical symptomatology that Ayurveda has mentioned, because they could be identified at a very early stage. There is a challenge that Medoroga is a bit silent. So purely clinical assessments may not be sufficient. And in Ayurveda, we have lost many of the ancient methods of Nadi Vijnana and other things through which we could identify the imbalance of the doshas. So signs that are leading to showing increase of Shleshma Vardhana and then leading to Medo Dushti should be looked for. And this should be made into a tool, an assessment tool that is currently not available. So I'm also not able to tell currently how we can make that into a tool. I feel that should be made into a assessment tool from an Ayurvedic perspective. And then we should correlate it with modern findings, laboratory findings, and together we should be able to assess this. So there are many lakshanas mentioned in Ayurveda as stages. So we could even have a grading of how much severe is the Medo Roga, depending on the manifestation of the symptoms, to very minor symptoms to, very stages of great severity. So this needs to be developed. Such a tool at this point of time is not available. So I hope.
So how to consider the fixation of Anupana and its dosage common to all patients in research works?
Yeah, Anupana, making it fixed for all patients is very difficult from an Ayurvedic perspective. As I told you in our own study, which we did with funding from the NIH, we had to customize. That customization is the heart of Ayurveda, according to the avastha of the patient, according to the condition of the disease. What we can do is we can create an algorithm for customizing the Anupana. We cannot fix a standard thing for everybody. I don't think that is possible in Ayurveda. And what the problem is, you may be, perhaps this question was asked, like, without such standardization, how can we do research? But it is possible. Today, that's what my own research work revealed, that it is possible to do scientific work even with customization if you incorporate that into the methodology. You cannot do it randomly. It shouldn't appear as if for one person I'm giving one dose, for another person I'm giving another dose. If you can define the parameters and show where and how I am going to adjust the Anupana, then you can bring it into a research perspective.
Thank you. As Ayurveda involves the administration of multiple treatment protocols, so if a study design involves 2 or 3 interventions, how to assess the treatment action?
Yes, this is a challenge. The first step as Ayurvedic community we should do is to show that things work. If there is compelling evidence that things are working, then the second step is to know how and why it works. The difficulty in understanding how Ayurvedic treatments work is because its mechanisms are complex. Such tools are not yet available. But instead of focusing initially on how mechanisms work, because we do not have adequate tools available. So I am more in favor of initially creating more interest in scientists that, something is working, and they should feel very enchanted that this thing is happening. Then only the curiosity will come of how it works. If we start focusing on how everything works in the initial stage itself, it may be very difficult. Because in Ayurveda, even Triphala, for example, there has been a study on network pharmacology in Triphala, published by Bhushan Patwardhan and his team. Still, there are so many unanswered questions. We are not even able to explain and understand how 3 herbs have come together and creating such complexity. So the science that is available today is designed to fractionate, dissect, and see individual components. As Ayurveda says, nahi jnana avayavena kritsne jnayet jnanam utpadyate. So it is the challenge of the future, understanding mechanisms. Now, when you say how we understand these different components work, I would say in Ayurvedic logic, it will not be difficult to explain. We have a clear understanding of how different components are working together. So in Ayurvedic framework, we will definitely be able to explain mechanism of action. But the challenge is in explaining in modern scientific terms. That is where I think the question is asked when you say, how will we explain action? Because for us, it is very clear. This medicine I'm giving for Pachana. This medicine I'm giving because I am using a Vata Gabhara medicine, which is used for Pachana. I'm adding another medicine to prevent Pitta from increasing. So for whatever I am doing, I have a clear yukti. I know how they all work together. So Ayurvedically, we can give the logic. From a modern point of view, I think more scientific work will need to be done. But if we can show that it works, that is what in our rheumatoid arthritis study, we were able to show. The mechanism is not known. But because we were able to demonstrate that this combination is working consistently across patients, that even the clinical significant improvement of 1.2 DAS score, disease activity score. If there is a change of 1.2, then it means the treatment is significant. Ayurvedic treatment was able to produce that. Now the doctors are asking, they're surprised, how is it happening? Now it is up to the task. Now, once we prove that it works, that data is not available with Ayurveda today. I think our focus should be on that. Show that medicine's treatments are working, explain the Ayurvedic logic, and then collaborate with modern researchers and scientists and try to understand how. Because when we are adding turmeric and pipali, many new things can come. Why pipali is added to it was recently discovered that curcumin is not bioavailable. Piperin is there in pipali, which when you add, curcumin becomes 2000 times more bioavailable. It was discovered through scientific studies. So many such things may be there. There are certain herbs in Chinese medicine, they found that when you add the leaves and root of the same plant, there are different chemicals in the root and leaf, and one is required to activate the other. So only when you combine the two, the result is there. In certain treatments, like for example, fasting and chemotherapy, it has been found that when you fast, chemotherapy works better. So why is it so? When you fast, the normal cells, to preserve energy, they become hypometabolic, means they don't receive nutrients from outside easily. Whereas cancer cells continue to be hypermetabolic. So when you do a little langhana before chemotherapy, then the chemotherapeutic agents go more towards the cancer cells because they suck it more faster, because they are hypermetabolic. They don't adjust to fasting. Normal cells are still hypometabolic, so they don't receive as much chemotherapeutic agent. So this simple study showed how diet and chemotherapy together can make a big difference. The side effects are greatly reduced if you can fast before chemotherapy. So in this way, it is possible. But if we are able to show that these treatments are working, in many ways, we can bring in science also to understand. But there we will need collaboration between Ayurveda physicians and modern scientists. But I think I'm sure all of you will agree that Ayurvedically, we know why we are combining. We have the yukti for combination. So I'm sorry, it was a long answer, but I thought I should clarify some points.
Thank you very much, sir. One more query, sir. So how to incorporate Daivayapashraya and Sattvavaya Chikitsa in clinical practice? And if the patient is not believing in God, how to adopt the same?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to bring God here at all. I think that has come from a modern influence of the Semitic religions. In fact, in our tradition, Astika Nastika doesn't mean whether God exists or not, whether we exist or not. The Paralokeshana means whether I am going to survive the death or not. Asti Paraloko Naveti Astika. So, Daivam actually means Purvakritam Karma. We are only trying to compensate for Purvakrita Karma. I think if we can explain to the people in a more interesting way, people will be able to adopt this more easily. Sattva-vidya definitely needed because, activating the mind, bringing the mind into the treatment, I don't think there will be any difficulty. Understanding, about your own self, your own personality, going deeper. So according to, even in India, we had a whole spectrum of philosophies, from bhakti to Sankhya to Nyaya to yoga to Vedanta. Vedanta is very intellectual. There is also Nirishwara Sankhya, my Sankhya system, which doesn't accept Ishvara. So depending on the person's mindset, we can present the darshanas in different ways. Different approaches are possible. Sushruta, the way Sushruta has explained philosophy is different from the way Charaka has explained it. But actually speaking, if we put it, Trividha Dukkham, our Dukkha comes from three sources: Adhyatmikam, Adibhaudikam, and Adhidaivigam. And Daivam here means Purvakritam Karma. It is the effect of our past action, collectively done, or individually done. So we cannot escape these three domains: that which is at the level of the physical body, that which is coming from our connection with the external world, and that which is coming from our mind. These three things are continuously influencing us. So my only feeling is today's people's mindset are different. The Shastra needs to be explained in a way that they can comprehend. That is the only thing that is needed. The principles are very sound. Most of the reason why people are not accepting it is because it has been interpreted and presented in a way that looks very superstitious. Or if we go to the principle, if we explain how and why it is, then I think it will gain more acceptance. For that, we should also better understand what we mean by Sattva Vijaya, Deva Vyapashraya, and Yukti. What is the difference? In Ayurveda, these three things have to be harmonized. And in different diseases, the role of Sattva Vijaya and Deva Vyapashraya may be different. Vagbhada also says, Ka nirmantre vakta bhedokti. There are diseases which can be treated nirmantra. Bhudebhyo hi param yasmad nasti chinta chikitside. There are some conditions where you can be just focused on the physical. Somewhere we have to go beyond. So that definition needs to be clearly understood. Drishtabharathaja kaschit kaschit purvabharathaja tat sangarat bhavatyanyo vyadhirevam trithasprada. So it's not that Ayurveda tells that for all conditions we have to I'm sorry for that interruption. So that's my frank opinion. And we can also, there are new studies going on in the West which are showing, the effect of intention on healing, the effect of prayer on healing. These things are also being studied. So I think Deva Vyapashraya, Sattva Vijaya Chikitsa, we can also bring more objective data supporting the relevance of these interventions. Even placebo, for example, is now being considered as a medicine, because if a person has a placebo effect, he will need less medicines. There was a talk by a very eminent psychiatrist who was saying that we should consider placebo as a genuine medicine, as an ethical medicine, because placebo has been given maximum in clinical trials. It has proved to be effective most of the times, better than the trial drug. So there is no other medicine that has been so widely tested. Even a placebo is effective. Healing begins from the mind. So many of these things are already happening in actual clinical practice. You must also address the belief system of the patient. Many modern doctors are doing this. If a person has a belief in spirituality, then you can work in that way. If the person doesn't believe in spirituality, then your psychological approach of the patient must change. Because Charaga says 3 types of lifestyle are there. Laugigam, karma yad vrittau, Vaidigam, swargadau chayat. Karmapavarge yachoktam tatchapyanye pradesh. So 3 types of people are there. The Laukikas, who may be not so interested in these things. Vaidikas, who are open to this. And Karmapavargis, who are more evolved. So according to the mindset of the individual, according to their beliefs, we will have to present the treatment. That is the skill of the physician. Jnana buddhi pradipena yona vishadi yogavit adurasya antaratmanam nasarogam chikitsati. So we are treating a karma purusha, his mental problems, struggles. So I think it is up to the skill. Ayurveda text has told you these are all the possibilities available. How you combine them, how you use. If you try to force Deva Vyapashraya or Sattva Vijaya, I don't think it will work. We need to be sensitive to the patient's mind, his philosophy, his understanding. And if we present it in the right way, definitely, I think we can incorporate all these things.
I once again thank Dr. P. Ramanohar sir for clearing the air in Dr. P. Ramanohar sir for Vikaras. Thank you, sir. So now I request Dr. Abdul Khader to convey the vote of thanks.
thanks on behalf of our institution to all PhD guides and PhD scholars across India. First and foremost, I would like to wholeheartedly offer my pranams and heartfelt thanks to His Holiness Param Pujya Shri Dr. Ashirvadan to gathering and enlighten us thinkings. Also, wholeheartedly thank His Holiness Pujya Sri Swami his continuous support for all activities of our institution. To wholeheartedly thank Murthy, former Joint Director Ayush Government of Karnataka, accepting our invitation and giving, which is opened new areas in the Ayurvedic basic science. And thank you, sir. Honor to thank wholeheartedly today's speaker, the internationally renowned and great researcher of Ayurveda, Dr. Raman. And so many new things are given, sir, today because of you are given new understand Madhumeha and different conditions and different patients. Very much for your knowledge and giving guidance to the upcoming scientists of Ayurveda, sir. Thank you very much. I also take this opportunity deans, HOD across India, collecting database of PhD scholars to related area of research, vital data of scholars to prepare database of PhD across India, first time in across. It is helping the RGHS and other PhD people to get one database. And this National Webinar Series exclusively for PhD scholars and involved, and his efforts has been fruitful by giving all the PhD guides and PhD scholars in one platform. I take this opportunity to thank him for his presence and motivation. Thank all RGHS team who helped this particular venture. And I thank all the teaching staff of Kalabarishwara and you the students of Kalabarishwara participation in the webinar series. And I thank the man, Dr. Supreet, Dr. Priyanka, for all the people who were helped directly and indirectly. Thank you, one and all.
So I request all the participants to rejoin with us on 22nd of this month for the deliberation by Dr. Santosh Kumar Bhatted sir on the topic role of Vamana Karma in dyslipidemia. Role of Vamana Karma in dyslipidemia. We will join together again on 22nd of this month at exact 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, one and all.